serious.
Hey, no sunshine. Check, 1, 2, 3, 4. Going out. Check. So you want me to start?
Yeah,
Anytime?
let's
All right.
go ahead.
Hey, hello there. Ain't no sunshine. The headline to come out of this afternoon, I'm sure, is Alan Strike. Is he still alive? Yes, I am, and still going mediocre. I'd say mediocre at best. And thank you, Sharm Hansen, for that mediocre at best introduction. So here I am at the Rotary Club, the premier club of Elkhart. The Rotary, I understand, over 100 years old. This club, 101 years old. Wow, and as I look around, some of the members have been here from the very beginning, haven't you? But I will say one thing about the Rotary Club lunch. It's a lot better than some of the other service clubs I've attended in recent months. And that's important to me because that's part of my compensation now since I've retired. I'm sort of like that guy in the corner you see, will work for food. That's me, will work for food. So I appreciate a good lunch. And I don't need that kind of stuff from you, Mel. Now, I want you to know, I'd like kudos to the club, too, for everything that you have done, that you are doing, and that you will do for the community of Elkhart, because you are appreciated and you do good work. I want you to know I'm not in my comfort zone in front of an audience. I spent the better part of 50 years in a fairly small room, all by myself, talking into a microphone, so sensing a potential disaster today, I'm having it filmed. So there's a possibility there will be film at 11. My talk today has absolutely no redeeming social value whatsoever. I'll be reading most of it. Couple of reasons. First of all, I don't have a teleprompter like those TV people. And even with a teleprompter, obviously I'd still be reading it, but it wouldn't be quite as obvious. And the second reason, if I tried to ad-lib this talk, well, none of us have that kind of time. Couple of PG words, nothing you haven't heard before. One of those words wouldn't make it past the Broadcast Standard and Practices Division, but as I look around, I think you folks have probably heard much worse. Oh, and I also tried to recreate a couple old radio commercials that include some of the original script. Hopefully you'll remember. If not, it will only be about a minute out of your day. I ran this presentation past an online critic who turned out to be a 400-pound fat guy in his underwear in his mom's basement somewhere in New Jersey. However, he did say I have a strong opening, strong closing. Unfortunately, his pizza arrived and he didn't get to critique what's in between. So with apologies to your president, Peter Norton, and your immediate past president, Ann McQuiston, here goes. The following Theater of the Mind program is brought to you live and in living color from the Matterhorn Conference Center in Elkhart, Indiana, where presently the Rotary Club of Elkhart is in session. This portion of our program is presented by Brill Cream. Brill Cream, a little dab will do ya. Brill Cream, you look so debonair. Men, beware. Use only one dab of Brill Cream. Just a little dab makes your hair look excitingly clean and disturbingly healthy. Use more only if you dare. I once knew a man, Peter Norton. He dared to use 2 dabs. And we're not quite sure whatever happened to Peter. Rumor has it he drifted from town to town, from one job to another, ended up in some service club somewhere in the Midwest. That's only a rumor, mind you, but I stray. Back to Brill Cream. Use more than 1 dab. Brill Cream refuses to be responsible. Don't end up like Peter Norton. Brill Cream, a little dab will do ya. Brill Cream, you look so debonair. Brill Cream, the gals will all pursue ya. They'll love to get their fingers in your hair. Brill Cream, available at any of your local Judd drugstores. Say the secret word, and Johnny Judd will give you a free pack of Luckies. We now return to our Theater of the Mind broadcast from the Elkhart Rotary Club. I was invited here today to talk about my career in local radio, and it'll only make sense if most of the crowd is from Elkhart or has lived in the Elkhart area for quite some time. If neither of that is true for you, you might as well go back to work now. Anybody leaving? Last chance. My name is Alan Strike. After high school, I attended NAOB, the National Academy of Broadcasting in Washington, D.C. Sounds more impressive than it really was. Then 6 years at WCED Radio Du Bois, near my hometown, followed by 44 years at WTRC Radio in Elkhart, for a grand total of 50 years in broadcasting. That's about it, everybody. Good night, everybody. Don't forget to tip your waitresses. That's old, I know, but so am I. I retired, kind of fired actually, from WTRC in the fall of 2009. My retirement joke, some of you may already have heard this, so humor me. Laugh again, please. You have to be a certain age to understand it, but again, looking around at this crowd, I don't think that's a problem. I used to be on radio. Now I'm on Medicare, Lipitor, and Metamucil. Excuse me. So 1965 was the year I came to Elkhart from Pennsylvania, start a new life and a new job. Do you remember 1965? Joan Rivers made her first appearance on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. Medicare, Senior Citizens Government Medical Assistance Program began. How many of you here today are on Medicare? Muhammad Ali was knocked out Sonny Liston in the first round in 1965. My Fair Lady won 8 Academy Awards. The British music invasion began with groups like the Beatles and Dave Clark 5. LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States. Matter of fact, he visits Elkhart County that year to observe the damage and destruction done by the Palm Sunday tornadoes. Yes, we all, or most of us, remember 1965. So with that background, and with very little fanfare, come to think of it, no fanfare, a young 25-year-old DJ with a flat-top crew cut, a wife, 2 very young kids, Beth and Scott, started spinning the platters at WTRC in the spring of 1965. 53 years ago, but who's counting? Oh, I just gave away my age, didn't I? 25 years old, 1965. Carry the 1, divide by 2, Damn, how old is he? I'm 78 and a half. You do that now. 78 and a half. Back then, WTRC was a big deal in our community. That was before cell phones and the internet, social media, everything else that makes our lives so much easier today, and in many ways more complicated. Back then, WTRC had an on-air staff of 6 DJs, 4 news people, with an equal number of support staff. And if it happened in Elkhart County, WTRC was there to cover it. And everybody knew that, and they tuned in to find out what happened. Things have changed. Now, one news person in one building somewhere can do news for 5, 6, 10 radio stations, and several DJs in, say, California can host a musical format for hundreds of radio stations across the United States. It's not as good because it ain't local, but it is what it is. Jack Laurie, a name you might remember, was the morning host when I came to town. I was given the 9 to 2 slot with a program already named Rhythm at Random. Wow, how original. Ed Hewitt hired me. He was the general manager, also a flustered DJ at heart. And to keep his fastball on the air, as Ed used to call it, he did a late afternoon record show from 5 to 6. He played what every other DJ played on the air, with one exception. Ed was a jazz fan, but WTRC didn't play any jazz music. We were an MOR station, middle-of-the-road music. Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Ray Conniff Singers, the Ames Brothers, Percy Faith. That jogged a couple of memories in this room also, huh? But Ed, being the GM, did what GMs can do, made his own rule. His show ended at 6, And each night around 5:50, Ed had what he called the jazz corner. He played a favorite jazz record. Now, what most people didn't know was Ed put the needle down on the jazz cut, put on his coat and hat, got in his car, turned on the radio, and drove home listening to his favorite music, jazz. I did a number of air shifts over the years, and for a lot of those years I was the program director at the radio station, but I'm mostly known as the host of a daily telephone talk show, Sound Off, that aired from during the noon hour. Jack Laurie was the original host of Sound Off, but only hosted the program a few months when he left for a radio station near Chicago. So in the fall of 1966, I took over the daily Sound Off telephone talk show and listened to the pulse of the community along with all the bitches and complaints for the next 34 years. Oh my God. Couple of Sound Off stories later. We'll return to our Theater of the Mind broadcast from the Matterhorn after this message from our sponsor, Alka-Seltzer. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Friends, do some folks attending a Rotary Club meeting give you a headache? Look around, you know the people we're talking about. Does the name Sherm Hansen come to mind? Should a headache spoil an entire meeting? Are you still feeling a little miserable and upset? Well, it would have been wise to take Alka-Seltzer earlier in the day. Next time, don't wait. Take it right away. And remember, Alka-Seltzer is first aid for relief from headache. Alka-Seltzer is easy to take, pleasant tasting too. Here's all you do. Dissolve 1 or 2 Alka-Seltzer tablets in a glass of water, then drink it. Since Alka-Seltzer is a solution, when you take it, the pain-relieving analgesic is ready to go right to work. And say that fizz that creates thousands of tiny sparkling bubbles gives speed to Alka-Seltzer's relief-giving qualities. Yes, it gets there fast to give fast relief. So remember, friends, next time you're in a Rotary Club meeting and your stomach begins to churn and your head begins to throb, and sitting across the table from you is Sherm Hansen, reach for the relief in a glass. Alka-Seltzer. You worked too hard, you ate too much, the cheesecake made you queasy. Let your aching head and stomach hear this message from a friend of old Speedy. Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. Those speedy bubbles relieve your upset stomach and headache fast. For acid indigestion alone, Alka-Seltzer Gold. Oh, what a relief it is. What a relief. Available at your local Alex drugstores. Tell Nafe Sherm Hansen sent you. We now return to our Theater of the Mind broadcast of the Elkhart Rotary Club from the beautiful Matterhorn Conference Center. Jack Laurie didn't last but a couple of years at that station near Chicago. Management near Chicago was not like management in Elkhart. I remember Jack telling me one of the news vehicles at that station, as far as a business write-off was concerned, was a silver Rolls Royce. It never covered one news story, and the station manager monitored all phone calls in his office. No, Chicago was not like Elkhart, so Jack came back as WTRC, WSJV-TV, Channel 28 sports director because while Jack was gone, Ed Hewitt hired a new morning man, someone you might all remember, someone already did back there in the audience, Bill Darwin. Couple of dates here to remember. I came in 65, Bill in 67, and we were both fired in August of 2009. Although we were both only working part-time at the time, and obviously we were old enough to retire. 44 years for me, 42 years for Bill, a combined 86 years of service on WTRC Radio. And you won't believe the party they threw for the two of us when we left. You won't believe it, because there wasn't any party. No cakes, no cookies, no party. Oh yeah, I'm still steamed about it. We lost Bill May 7th, 2014, and the following is part of my eulogy at his funeral. Bill and I would get mixed up by the public from time to time. I know that's hard to believe, but it did happen. I do have a nose, I do wear glasses, and I do have hair. But I never had that hair, I never wore those glasses, and I definitely don't have that nose. But Bill used to say, "Hey, Alan, if it wasn't for my nose and these glasses, nobody would recognize me." On those occasions, when we did get mixed up by the public, we would always say, "Well, at least you got the right radio station." Since our retirement, we did get together for lunch about every 5 or 6 weeks with former WTRC staffers. Last time I saw Bill was at Dingus Day down at the Knights of Columbus. We weren't sitting together, but we did exchange a few words when we saw each other. Sitting across from me, down a couple of seats, was an older couple, about my age. And recognizing me, they started talking about WTRC, remarking how much they missed WTRC. And the woman specifically said she missed me on the radio, used to listen to me all the time. And after exchanging a few more pleasantries about the good old days, she asks, "Whatever happened to Alan Strike?" And not missing a beat, I said, "Oh, he died a few years ago. He was hit by a train. It was tragic." "Oh, how awful," she said. I agreed. Then I confessed, "Just kidding, I'm Alan Strike." And Bill Darwin is sitting right over there. The radio station had a long association with Special Olympics. In 1981, we took a small group of Special Olympians in the Rainbow Express, the station mobile unit, to the Indy 500 track and field event. Tom Sneva was our captain for our team, and he won the race the next week. Locally, we helped Special Olympics track and field meets at Memorial here in Elkhart. I was the announcer. Bill Darwin was the hugger. Chamber of Commerce Beautification Committee, the radio station was always involved in that. The Beautification Committee each year would come to the radio station with what they thought was a prepared song to record. It was awful. They recorded it, but we played it on the radio because it was for city beautification, and we were the local radio station. I have my own corner downtown. Well, I share it with Darwin at the corner of Marion and 2nd Street. It's the honorary Darwin Strike Corner. Long association with the city of Elkhart. I spent probably almost 40 years on Island Park during Rhapsody in Green. Numerous other city events I hosted. 4th of July, Winterfest, Labor Day parades, park concerts, New Year's Eve kazoo contest. We used to do a live broadcast from the Civic Plaza on New Year's Eve, waiting for the clock to go up, the clock tower. We had a heart that went up to the clock tower, and then fireworks went off, and we played Old Lang Syne. But during that hour, we had a kazoo contest. It was ridiculous, but anybody could play a kazoo. One person, two people, a trio, a whole family, but we wasted the time till we got to the fireworks, and then broadcast the fireworks on radio. Think about that. 2008, the Elkhart Sesquicentennial. I recorded over 500 people, probably some of you folks in this room, celebrating the Sesquicentennial. I was the MC at 14 events over a 3-day period, most involved and most gratifying. If it happened in and around Elkhart, WTRC was involved. For a period of time, we even broadcast the Tuesday night municipal band concerts live on the air. Of course, it helped that I was the announcer for the band and worked at the radio station. For a number of years, we broadcast live music all weekend from the Jazz Festival. Bill and I emceed stages. I'm still the announcer for the municipal band every Tuesday night through the summer, still MC at the Jazz Fest. And a week ago Saturday, I was the MC at the Elkhart Black Expo Parade. I'm still getting her done. During its day, WTRC was the go-to radio station in Elkhart County. We were it. Bill Darwin, Jack Laurie, Alan Strike, a lot of other names, too numerous to mention, but I'm sure you'd recognize operative words there. During its day is past, and it ain't coming back. Now, I don't know where you get your local news. Of course, the TV stations have some local news, but you gotta admit they're located in South Bend. Their priority is over there. So I would recommend that you continue to support one local news outlet we still have, That's the Elkhart Truth. I know it's not the newspaper of old, but it's still a source for local news, including those ever important obituaries. Now let me take just a couple of minutes to talk about the program Sound Off, the telephone talk show during the noon hour. We covered every kind of subject, from the Vietnam War, Save the County Home, garbage collection, everything in between. It was a small town, over the back fence kind of talk show. The program was aired on a 7-second delay because you never knew what someone would say. Plus, the station had to be protected from getting sued. In a larger town radio station, there would be an engineer, a producer, a call screener, and a host for a program like Sound Off. In smaller towns like Elkhart, I was the engineer, I was the producer, I was the call screener, and I was also the host. So there was a lot of responsibility, and I'm proud to report 34 years of doing Sound Off, WTRC never got sued. Sound Off relied on its regulars to call. The phrase, "a no sunshine," grew out of my desperation for a caller. They say, I don't know whether it's still true today, but about 2% of a listening audience will call a talk show. Well, the listening audience of a small town radio station ain't that big to begin with. 2% of that audience is minuscule. So there were times when I was looking at the phones and there was nobody calling, and out of desperation came a no sunshine. 295-2110 is the number. Something you'd like to talk about, give me a call. A no sunshine. And it became sort of a habit that the regulars said, oh, Alan doesn't have anybody to talk to. So they would call, bail me out, like people like Burn Barrel, Virginia. She got her nickname because she was fed up. She could no longer put a barrel in her alley to burn her garbage. That was Burn Barrel, Virginia. Evelyn, who lived in the hole down off Vistula Street, was a regular caller. Earl Fields, Earl the Pearl. Al Foreman. Al Foreman called Sound Off once a week for 34 years, talking about the John Birch Society. Shipshawana Nancy, another regular. Rosie Eads, Ambrosia, Martina Frechette, and Crazy Pat. Crazy Pat was a friend of the DJ. No, not that kind of friend. Not that kind of friend. She clipped clippings out of the newspaper, out of Reader's Digest, anywhere, and little interesting things, and she'd stuff them in an envelope. And about every month or so, all the DJs, the announcers, would get an envelope just stuffed full of little thought starters, things they could talk about on the air. And she reminded me one time, a few years ago, Alan, she said, do you remember the time I was in the hospital and you DJ sent me a nice card with get well wishes? It was so nice, along with a dead plant. I said, no, I don't remember it, but I believe we would have done that. Mike Maloney was also a regular caller on Sound Off. He appeared with every season change. And when I came to town in 1965, Mike already had a program on the radio station, 11:45 Saturday morning, called Down to Earth. And Mike talked about whatever was going on in the lawns or shrubs or whatever. And he always had a solution, and that solution was available to buy. Not at Martin's Pet and Garden Center. He never mentioned Martin's Pet and Garden Center. He always said, well, you can get that at your favorite garden store. And we always kidded Mike when he was going to change the name from Martin's to your favorite garden store. Mike would take Jack Laurie and I golfing several times a year to the Elkona, also the Elks. We loved going to the Elks because about every fourth hole, Mike would say, do you want a beer? And he'd go in a garage and come out with 4 beers. And Mike always bought me a bottle of booze for Christmas until he quit drinking. Then it became a tray of cookies. Sophie Starzinski, many of you here remember Sophie Starzinski. She called every week. She sort of teetered on sanity and insanity. But she ended every call with, and may justice return to Elkhart. There was a guy by the name of Herb Reeves who was associated with the mobile homes who pestered me for a number of years to have a Sound Off picnic. So on the 20th anniversary, I said, all right. We had it over at McNaughton Park Pavilion, which seats 250, 300 people. We filled it. It was a sound-off carry-in picnic. I didn't eat a lot. Anyway, we finished eating, and people got up, introduced themselves. And people got, I'm Burn Barrel. Oh, God, that's Burn Barrel, Virginia, putting faces to names. I'm Earl the Pearl. Oh, that's Earl the Pearl. Or I'm just a listener. But we went up and down the seating arrangement until the last person said their name. And meanwhile, Sophie had come in the side door, went over, got something to eat, and sat down. And I said, wait. I said, no, we're not quite finished yet. One last person come in, would you identify yourself? And with that, the chair shot out, she stood up, and she was at full volume, putting the Jim Perrin Association and the Nazis and Auschwitz all in the same sentence. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. We don't have security. And it went on for probably 30, 40 seconds. And finally I said, oh, wait, just your name, what do you do? She stopped and said, Sophie Starzinski, practicing environmentalist. Sat down. That was it. Strange calls. Bill Van Patten called once from 13,000 feet over Kentucky. That's probably not that unusual today, but it was back then. Ship Shawana Nancy once called from an Amish graveyard. A lot of the Amish cemeteries have little shacks with phones in them. She called from there, said I'd been there sooner, Alan, but there were 3 buggies ahead of me. Kid calls, some legit, some crank. Kid called me one time and asked me what I thought about if I had been listening to Phil Donahue that morning. I said, no, I don't watch Phil Donahue in the morning. I'm on radio. Why? Well, we're talking about a cross-dresser was a guest. What did I think of that? And I'm thinking, what am I going to say? I don't want to talk about cross-dressing on the radio at this time of day with a kid. And it dawned on me, it was a school day. I said, wait. Why are you home? It's school day. Oh, he said, I got the diarrhea. Kid called me 3 times. First time, I said, hi, this is Sound Off. Is Jim there? I said, no, you have a wrong number. Now, I wasn't a young kid, so I couldn't tell. Second time, hi, this is Sound Off. A few calls later. Hi, this is Sound Off. Is Jim there? I said, no, I already told you got a wrong number. A few calls later, hi, this is Sound Off. Yeah, this is Jim. Any calls for me? Yeah, they faked you out. So I'll explain how I answered the phone. Since I'm all by myself in that control room, when there's a commercial on, I answer the phone, say, hi, this is Sound Off, can we use your first name? If there's not a commercial on, I just take the call cold, not knowing who's going to be on the other end. But when there's a commercial on, I say, hi, this is Sound Off, can I use your first name? They usually tell me, and I ask, what are we going to talk about? And this one instance, what the gentleman wanted to talk about was very libelous. Obviously could get the station in a lot of trouble. And I said, no. I said, you can't put that on the air. He said, well, why not? I know it's true. Now, understand, this is off the air. I said, well, you may think it's true. I don't know it's true. I'm not going to let you on the air. Well, I want to be on the air. I said, look, I tried to think of the most outrageous example. I said, it would be like me getting on the air and accusing you of child molestation. Oh, no. He said, they couldn't prove that. They never did. I was acquitted. And I'll tell you how the 7-second delay works. I wear a headphone in one ear. Well, during the program, both ears are real time, what we're doing. I don't think of it being in delay. But if somebody says something I need to cut, I throw a switch which separates the headphones. What's really happening real time is in this ear, and what's happening 7 seconds later is in this ear. Sounds a little complicated, but it was really just reaction time. So we were talking on the air, and I don't remember the specifics, but whatever the subject was, the guy who brought it up, some people were very sympathetic of his cause. Other people, not so much. And it went back and forth, back and forth. I go to commercial, and during the commercial, I take a call. I say, hi, this is Sound Off. Can we use your first name? He said, yeah, this is Ted over at St. Vincent's. What do you want to talk about, Ted? Well, I'd like to add to what what y'all been discussing. And I'm thinking, okay. And I'm thinking, great. Here's a member of the clergy. We're going to have a professional opinion now. We'll get it done. Commercials are over. I go back on the air and sound off. Ted, you're on. What do you want to discuss? And Ted says, well, I'd like to add to what you all have been talking about. I said, fine. I said, we'd love to know what you think about it. He said, well, I'll tell you what I think, Alan. I think the son of a bitch is nuts. Obviously, it wasn't Father Ted at St. Vincent's. Must have been Maintenance Ted at St. Vincent's. One final story about using the delay and saving some embarrassment. Crazy Pat. She wasn't all that crazy. Her husband ran a welding shop. They were salt of the earth people. But she would call every week about various subjects. And I sort of got to know her when I ran into her on the street or somewhere. And she lived out off of Fort Wayne Road. And one day I'm driving past. I thought, well, I'll just stop and say hello to Pat. She lived off the road, maybe, I don't know, several hundred feet. So I drove back. I'm in the station vehicle. And there's a circular driveway. She's in the middle of the circle in her flower garden. And so I just stopped. Pat, how you doing? We had a nice conversation for just a few minutes. And I left, and that was it. Next week on the air, when Pat calls, she and I were talking about whatever she wanted to talk about. And then just as she's about to hang up, I said, oh, Pat, so it was nice to see you last week. Yeah, she said, you jerk. I said, what do you mean, you jerk? She said, you come to my house unannounced. I'm sitting in my flower garden. Hair's a mess, no makeup, wearing sweatpants, sweatshirt, no bra. My tits are hanging down to my knees. I got 7 seconds. Well, I'm happy to report Pat's girls were not exposed on WTRC that day. Listen, I'll end today with one final commercial that you can help me with. Campbell's Soup. Are you ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. Good. That's what Campbell's Soup says. Good. Not so many years ago, friends, tomato soup and cream of tomato were unusual dishes, enjoyed very much but not very often. Today, of all the soups in the world, tomato soup is the one most often served. Not split pea, not bouillabaisse, and not lobster bisque. No, the most popular soup is tomato soup. And not because women have taken to making tomato soup frequently. No, on the contrary. New housewives like Ann McQuiston never attempt it anymore. There's just one reason for tomato soup's popularity, and it is this: the magic, matchless flavor of Campbell's tomato soup. There's a lively verve, exacting zest about the flavor that people take to at lunch and come back to enjoy again and again. So this soup is a happy choice for the main dish at lunchtime or at supper, and it's also a fine way to start the day's main meal. Serve it sometimes, too, as cream of tomato with milk instead of water. Oh, what a surprise that'll be for the family. So take it from Ann McQuiston. You can always be sure it will be received with pleasure, because this, of all soups, is the one people like to have most often. Campbell's tomato soup. On 3, help me out now. 1, 2, 3. Good. Good. That's what Campbell's soup says. Good. And that's the way it is for Monday, August 6, 2018. I'm Walter Cronkite. Good night, Chet. Good night, David. Good night, John Boy. Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are. Thank you.